Here's another fine mess that I'm into, honey. They won't cut me loose, not for love nor money. I'm a fighter, but they got me on the floor. Don't believe I'm gonna take this anymore. Here's another fine mess I've stumbled into. The sorriest state as I've ever been to, though it's difficult for some to understand.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And on today's episode, we're talking about The End from 1978, continuing Burt Reynolds month. But before we get into that, we do have a Patreon over on patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturepodcast. We offer bonus episodes for just $5 a month. If you want to help support the show, you get some fun content and you help us get some movies. But getting into this one, The End is a comedy, a black comedy, a very, very dark comedy from Burt Reynolds, directed by him. And yeah, I'll just say it was surprising. It was a big surprise. I was not expecting this. I can understand this being a big, a shock to people at the time, because after watching all these Burt Reynolds before this is like a total change for me.
Yeah, it's not one you would think of him doing. I mean, like we've said in the past, he's kind of done like these big, heavy type roles where he's just like the strong, silent type, like man's man, I'm not taking any crap from anybody type of thing. And now it's just kind of funny where he's just playing like this real, like sniveling, like crybaby type character. It's just like something you would totally not expect. And it, like you said, it's dealing with such a heavy subject of suicide, and it's played for laughs, and it's a pretty funny movie. I'd forgotten how funny it was.
Yeah. No, I was really surprised how funny this movie is. I guess it's just, I really like seeing Burt Reynolds in such a different role because he's a real estate mogul. He wears a beard in this, and he's kind of, I don't know, he's almost like, it's like a loser type character, right? He gets told that he has a rare blood disease and he's going to die. And his first thought is like, well, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to look at death in its face. I'm just going to kill myself.
Yeah, it's funny because he's had all this misfortune and stuff, but it's kind of revealed that, he kind of was like a terrible person leading up to this. So it's almost like it's kind of like he kind of brought, it's kind of deserved like a lot of the stuff that he's brought on, or like he was like a terrible husband, a terrible father. He swindled people from all this land. And
they even have a great joke that comes up multiple times where it's like, oh, you bought real estate from me? I promise you there was a lake there when I bought the land, because he sold like lakeside estates and there was no lake.
Yeah, he's like a real scummy like guy, and he's just like the first scene that we see him, and he's just like a blubbering mess, like just like finding out that he's about to die.
Yeah, and I really like there's like a quote from Burt Reynolds where he says a lot of people were upset by this role because they thought it was very different from who I was, but he said this role was probably closer to who he actually was than any of the other movies, which I find interesting. He loved this movie, like reading, like talking. He compares himself to European directors, like Ingmar Bergman for this movie, which, I mean, good for him that he loved this movie and he feels that deeply about it.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of his directed movies, but I think this is his best one that he's directed. I mean, it's it's a really funny movie. I mean, he does really well in there, and I think like the script in here though, but it doesn't. The thing I noticed was like, this movie feels like a Woody Allen type of movie, and I looked, and apparently that's who they originally wanted in the movie, was Woody Allen. So it makes sense, but I think Burt Reynolds is a better replacement probably.
Could you imagine that? Like Woody Allen, it'd be a lot mopier, oh my God, Doc. I'm going to die, Doc.
What do you mean I'm going to die? I don't understand.
It's a bot, Doc. I can't even call my mom on the phone. I can't even hold a gun.
I can't even deal with this. I'm going to kill myself.
Not saying that would be pretty funny, but I like that Burt Reynolds is the role. I think he adds a whole different, element to it. Because it's one of those movies where he's saying goodbye to everybody, and you get to meet the whole cast of characters. And, oh, hey, just like Tuesday's episode, Sally Field shows up in this as, like, a dirty, like, a hoarder, like, with a bunch of cats.
Who Burt Reynolds does not treat very nice at all.
No, he's kind of awful to her. Like she just seems like a really nice person. Like she just like seems to want to do good. She's just kind of dumb, but he's very quick to call her that.
Like Burt Reynolds and when he finds out he's dead, he's about to die, and he's going over to tell Sally Field about it. And, she's like super emotional, and he's just like, uses this moment to get like sympathy to get laid, and she's like it's like sobbing, finding out that her boyfriend's about to die, and he's just like, come on, like I'm about to die, and she's like, I can't do that right now, and like and he basically just like begs her for sex, and then she finally does it.
And then it ends up not being good enough, and that becomes like a whole thing. It's like, oh, you couldn't have just lied that it was good. And she's like, no, I'm not going to lie, because she's like a decent person. He's like, but I'm dying. Just lie that it was good.
Yeah, he's like giving her like a play-by-play. Like, he's like, oh, like, is this the part like where you felt the best? Or and she's like, I don't want to have a play-by-play of what we did.
Yeah, I thought that was really great. Now, it's that's what it felt, kind of episodic, like it goes from scene to scene, and you'll see a lot about this movie. It seems almost like a buddy movie. Like every poster I saw before this and all that is like Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds. Dom DeLuise doesn't appear until like an hour into this movie. There's a lot of build up to that.
Yeah, there's not much. He probably shows up like more than halfway into the movie.
Yeah. And of course, he's really strong in the end of the movie. Obviously enough because Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise would be in multiple movies together after this. I don't know why. Well, I do know why they became a team after that, because, it works. I actually think they're a pretty funny team together. I wouldn't say I ever thought Dom DeLuise was like really that funny. He's funny, but not like somebody like, oh, I really hold him in high regard. But he's good in this. Just
you wait until we hit the Cannonball Run.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then I'll hold him in high regard.
Yeah, if an American Tail didn't do it for you, then I don't know what will.
Or Troll in Central Park, right?
Oh, yeah, classic.
Yeah, an instant classic. But he plays Burt Reynolds does actually, he does it. He ends up killing himself, but he ends up like calling the cops from taking sleeping pills that he gets from his parents, which that whole bit is funny, where he goes to see his parents and he's asking for sleeping pills, and his mom's like, no, and his dad's like, well, yeah, we have enough to kill an elephant or something.
Yeah. And he ends up like taking like a bunch of pills, and it's just like a big color. And it's funny because when he finally does like attempt to kill himself, like just like he gets like held up like doing multiple things, and he's like at first he's like, he takes all the pills, and then he swigs it down like milk, and the milk ends up being sour, and
he spits it out.
Yeah, and then he runs over to the kitchen and like ends up like drowning it with vodka and then like chips, and then he eats the chips and all right, you can't just have one, and he grabs more chips.
Yeah, it's good. That's what it feels like. It's like you could say either the most unlucky man or the most lucky man, because he seems to find ways to get out of suicide constantly.
Well, that's kind of like what it's revealed towards the end of the movie, like when he does attempt suicide. He goes to a psych ward where he meets Dom DeLuise, but he does meet with a psychiatrist type of character, and the psychiatrist is basically like, well, maybe you don't want to kill yourself, and that's why you keep running into these roadblocks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the big moral of the story is, that he really didn't want to kill himself. He was just being a big baby about all this thing. But it is kind of funny. But it is kind of funny, like the psychiatrist that he meets was like talking about like we're all gonna die. Like me, I have this heart condition, but I feel great. And then like by the end of the scene, the guy dies.
Yeah, he ends up dying because it's funny how it's played because he's just like, yeah, I could die any minute, and then he ends up jumping a lot, and it played by Carl Reiner, and great scene.
Yeah, it was really funny because he was talking about like, yeah, I played tennis. He's like, oh yeah, how was your tennis game? He's like, oh, it was pretty shitty. And he's like, but I played that way before I was sick.
Yeah, and in the end, it seems like he really convinced Burt Reynolds to live, and of course, that's when he dies, right?
Yeah.
As soon as he convinces him. But yeah, that's what's nice about this movie is it has all these jokes about suicide and him attempting suicide, but in the end, it doesn't really have that dark ending. It really has a nice it's very positive because he has something to live for. You get to meet his daughter, and he has a lot to keep going for. Played by Christy McNichol.
Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie was Burt Reynolds goes and gives a confession at a church.
Yes, yeah.
And the priest that they get is this like really young boy, like in his like early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like trying to do a confession with Burt Reynolds, and he's such like a little kid about it that it's really funny.
Yeah.
And that priest was actually played by Robbie Benson. Do you know who that is, Nathan?
No, who's Robbie Benson?
Do you remember Beauty and the Beast?
Yes.
He's the Beast.
Oh, he's the Beast. Wild. Okay. That's a very different role because I love the confessional scene because Burt Reynolds is like, yeah, I've masturbated a lot. I've dealt with that. And then he's like, oh, I have that problem too.
Yeah, he's like that. He's like, is that all? Like, that's my biggest one. And
Yeah.
and then Burt Reynolds is like, I committed adultery. He's like, oh, he's like getting all excited and like how many times? It's like, well, let's see, over 8 years, like 200 times. And he's like, 200. Oh, wow. Like, he's just like so impressed by it.
But Burt Reynolds I like his commitment to it because at first he's like, oh, you're way too young to be a priest, and then he's like, you know what, you're my priest, you're gonna be my priest, I'm gonna talk to you. And I guess he had never done a confession before. He was his first.
Oh yeah, that was funny because when he gets him in the confession booth, he's like, how long has it been since your last confession? He's like, maybe like 20 years. He's like, I was hoping at least one of us would be good at this.
Yeah, that whole bit was good. And I thought there was a lot of funny scenes when he gets to the mental hospital. Like he tries to crush his head in the hospital bed. And then they find out because it's a mental hospital, they get rid of every suicide device, so they take out all the beds. They kick everyone out. We're getting new beds.
Yeah, they're like, all right, everyone, don't worry, we're bringing in the new safe beds.
Yeah.
And but yeah, he meets Dom DeLuise at the psychiatric ward, and Dom DeLuise is really funny because he has like a really long backstory where he like strangled his father, and he's like, I blame my father for everything. He's the reason why I got told all these Polish jokes. He's like, he started saying all these Polish jokes, and Burt Reynolds is like, yeah, kids can be really cruel. He's like, kids? What kids? My father told me all those jokes.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. That kept getting brought up, the Polish jokes. Yeah, because he puts himself down. It's like, oh, I'm just a dumb Polish person. It's good stuff. And and what it happens is Dom DeLuise puts it upon himself to help Burt Reynolds at any cost to kill himself because Burt Reynolds says he likes Dom DeLuise. He's like one of the first people to say that he likes him. So he's like, all right, I'm going to help you do this. So and then it becomes a buddy film about them attempting suicide together. Right.
Well, there's a scene where he's on the ledge and Burt Reynolds is like clearly doesn't want to jump off of it. And he's just like, just go, just jump. I'll cheer you on. And Burt Reynolds like, you're gonna have to give me a minute here, and he's like, it's not high. So he like grabs him and like hangs him over the edge, like, it's not high enough, pull me up, and
Mm-hmm.
And then Dom DeLuise ends up accidentally flying off of the ledge and like hits the ground. He's like, "You're right, it wasn't high enough."
Well, even like when he says it isn't high enough, Burt Reynolds gets, Dom DeLuise lifts Burt Reynolds up, and Burt Reynolds slaps him across the face like, "Don't you dare! If I say that, don't drop me, you better drop me. Don't listen to me."
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was the thing. Like there was another scene too where they're trying to hang him, and Burt Reynolds is getting hanged, and he keeps saying like, "It's too tight, like I'm choking, take it off," and then like he takes it off, and he's like, "You idiot! Another minute, I would have been dead."
Yeah, and they eventually end up escaping this mental institution. And the end of this movie, I will say, I feel like once they escape, I feel like the momentum of the movie, I really like this movie, I do, but I feel like the momentum slows down just a little bit after that.
I thought it was a little unnecessary, like him going back to Sally Field's house and like having like one final thing. I'm like, because I kind of like wrapped up. I figured like the whole storyline was kind of like wrapped up with that, but
yeah.
But I will say though, like the Burt Reynolds like final monologue of the movie is like
great.
My favorite part of the entire movie.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like it's both emotional and very funny because, he ends up going out to a lake and he's going to swim to the middle to drown himself, and it's playing...
Or the ocean.
The ocean. And My Way is playing, and the music's blasting, and he does it, and you think he's going to be triumphant in killing himself, and then he's like, "No, hold on. I'm not going to do it." And it's huge monologue at the end of the movie of him going back. And it's both funny and very emotional. I really like it.
It's so funny because he's like having like a heart to heart with God, and he's saying like, "God, if you help me, like I'll obey the 10 commandments." And he starts like naming them, like, "I shall not commit adultery. I won't murder anybody. I won't." It's like, "I promise to learn the 10 commandments, then obey them."
And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to give you 20%. No, 50% of everything I earn." You hear that? That's more than anybody.
Yeah. And then, eventually he does make it back to the shoreline. And then he said, "I'll send you that 10% check right away, God." And it's like, he's like, "I know I said 50, but nobody gives 50. And let's not forget, you tried to kill me." And it's just like, it was funny though. Like, he's like, "I promise I won't swindle anybody. Well, until I sell off the rest of the land, and then I promise I won't."
Yeah, it's great. You think that's the end. He found his resolution, but then Dom DeLuise shows up and continues to try to murder him. But they end up rolling around in the water, like in the oh God, what's that movie?
From Here to Eternity.
Yeah, From Here to Eternity. They're rolling around in the water, like really happy and alive.
Yeah, it's a fun little movie. I mean, I guess, some people don't like dealing with suicide, or, it could be something that they don't want to even deal with, which is understandable. But
yeah, it's definitely a tough subject. But I think, I feel like this movie, with its finale, it teaches a good message. It's not like, oh, suicide's a funny topic. It kind of is here, but it also is like, there's people out there that care about you. You have a reason to live.
Yeah, and it is kind of funny, like, because they do like kind of talk about the moral of the story, because he does meet up with his ex-wife towards the end of the movie, and she asked him like, what is that going to do to you? Like, what's that going to do to your daughter? Like, you're going to leave everybody in a really bad place. She even said like, it's like, would you let me kill myself if I was trying to? And he's like, well, I mean, if you wanted to. And then he kind of thinks about it, like, no, I couldn't do that. And
exactly. Yeah. It kind of shows, like, because I feel like the idea is that Burt Reynolds he's selfish, and it's kind of selfish to put all that pain on some other people. And it's good.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it is. He's finally realizing that he needs to start thinking of other people other than himself.
Exactly. No, and I actually, I really liked it after watching it, but talking about it here today, I think I really, really like this movie. It's very different than any other movie I think we're going to talk about for Burt Reynolds month. But I think it's a hidden gem. I think you should check it out. It's definitely forgotten about. I've never heard of this movie until now.
Yeah, and that's how I heard of it. Like my stepfather and like other people who were Burt Reynolds fans told me about it, and that's what made me seek it out. This is my second time seeing this movie. There's other really fun bits of dialogue in here that I do want to say that I wrote down. There's the one scene at the very beginning where he's getting an X-ray, and Burt Reynolds, they turn out all the lights, and he's like, "It's dark, I can't see," and the nurse says, "You're lucky because I'm ugly." Another one was they see like like Burt Reynolds sees like a hearse driving, and he's like trying to talk to the grieving family as they're driving, be like, "Hey, how'd he die?" And like they're like, "Get out of here! What are you doing, you idiot!" Like, and he's like, "Well," and he got all like offended. He's like, "Man, like I might have been a customer for you guys. This is how you treat me." And,
yeah, it's God, I'm probably forgetting so many funny bits because this movie it really does fire on all cylinders. I feel like something is always going on.
Another funny one was at the hospital. They were like, "Dr. So-and-so, we need you in intensive care right away." And then like 2 seconds later, "Oh, never mind, doctor."
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a good one.
There's lots of little funny bits in here. I mean, we could just sit here all day just going over like funny lines. There's a lot more bits we could talk about in here that were really funny. Like he had the lawyer friend, and like the guy's like trying to eat his meal, and Burt Reynolds is like trying to tell him that he's dying, and the guy's like continually eating. He's like, "Could you not wait for 5 minutes? Like while I'm telling you I'm dying." He's like, "Well, I'm really hungry." And so I mean, we could talk about that kind of stuff all day, but we're not going to do it any justice. So I would say just to go and seek it out on your own. It's a good time.
Yeah, I agree. It's a high recommend. Definitely check it out. But I think that's the end of the end. Someone had to say it.
I wasn't even thinking of that.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Wow. Comic genius over here.
Big brain comedy guy, Nathan.
But Ryan, what are we going to talk about next time?
Well, Nathan, we're going to be talking about another Hal Needham movie, and that is the movie Hooper. And you can watch that movie over on HBO Max. And that's on HBO streaming service if you want to watch along with us.
Yeah. And if you want to send us an email, you can send that over to driveindoublefeaturpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And also be sure to follow us over on Twitter @DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.
Here's another fine mess and not my choosing. We loved for a while, you can't call that losing. If I knew our love was gonna end this way, I'd live it over and I wouldn't change a day.